This is my little Christmas candle because I light Christmas candles year round, because Christmas candles are always the best smelling ones. It's like Christmas and like fall Halloween candles are always the best. That might just be my opinion, but they are. I'm too comfortable with fire, like, honestly. So I have been making like little monthly book recaps, but I decided that it might be a good idea to just go back and talk about other books that I've read throughout my life that I really love, and, you know, put them out there, give them little recommendations. So that's what I'm going to do right here, right now. So the first book that I want to recommend was my favorite book ever when I was a kid for many, many years, and I read it over and over and over again, and it's an amazing book. I'm not sure why I was quite so obsessed with it, but I do think it's an absolutely wonderful book, and I think that everybody should read it. And it's called Out of My Mind by Sharon M. Draper. And this book, before anything, there's a little quote up here from the Denver Post, and it says, "If there's one book teens and parents and everyone else can read this year, Out of My Mind should be it." And I think that that quote does a really, really good job. This is a story about a 5th grader named Melody who has cerebral palsy, and it goes through and kind of tells her story and talks about being somebody who has very, very limited physical abilities. She can't speak, she doesn't have proper control over her body movements, but she's extremely intelligent. Just a fascinating character who is basically trapped inside of her head, and it's really, really emotional to read, and it's really, really sad at times, and it's really, really beautiful at times. And I think that this book is really, really important for everybody to read, and I think what I love about it is that it is good for children. Children can easily read this book and understand it, and it's a good way to get children thinking about people who are different than them, and it helps them think about how people with differences struggle, the importance of respecting and loving everybody around you. I think that this book is perfect because, like I said, it's very readable for, you know, younger kids and teenagers and stuff, but it is still just as touching for adults as well. I don't feel like it's like a childish book at all. I think it's, like the quote said, it is good for everybody to read. This book, read it. It's absolutely amazing. Please. The more I talk about books, the more that I realize I am a huge Stephen King nerd, but the next book that I'm going to recommend, I have recommended this to like everybody that I know, and I don't think that anybody I know has read this book. So hopefully somebody reads it and talks to me about it, because that would be The Shining by Stephen King. And this is actually a really cool little collection. It has Carrie, The Shining, and Salem's Lot. I still have to read Salem's Lot. I don't know why I've been procrastinating on that, but I've read Carrie and The Shining. The Shining has been literally one of my favorite books I've ever read. And I think part of the reason that I love The Shining is because the movie does it so little justice. Now, before I talk about the movie, because I could make a whole separate video about why I think the book is so much better than the movie, but it comes strictly from a storytelling perspective, because I completely respect the movie for its value in cinematography, and, you know, the like acting and stuff, I guess, is good. I don't know, I'm not a huge movie person, but from a storytelling perspective, Stephen King's book is like a trillion times better. The character development, just everything about it is just, the ending is different, the characters are different, the just like vibe is different. Like, it's just, the movie is not the same. The movie feels very, it's uncanny. It's like the uncanny valley of stories. Like, it's just not right. There's just something off about it. I'm sure that The Shining, if you're a movie person, great. It's iconic. It was a great stride in movie land. But for talking movie adaptations of books, it's not really there. Yeah, I don't want to go into too much detail because I don't want to spoil, but the book is just so much more fully fleshed out. Jack Torrance is like a trillion bajillion times more developed and well-rounded as a character, and everybody there just has so much more to them, and so much more personality, and so much more history. Enough to talk about the movie. The book itself is just really, really good. It's really, really scary. It's really, really intense. It's really, really unique and creative. His writing, it's just so good, and there are a lot of very little things that I like about it. Ideas that I thought were clever and smart. It's so well written. It's so spooky. It's so eerie. It's so just perfect. So please read The Shining. And read Carrie too. while you're at it. I have never seen the movie Carrie, but the book was really good, so I guess I'm recommending that as well. And let me know how good Salem's Lot is, because I am going to read that eventually. Moving on, this is a book that is really, really popular right now, and that would be The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. If you're like on like Book Talk or BookTube, or if you see content about books literally anywhere, you've probably heard of this book. Or if you've like walked into a store that sells books, you've probably at least seen this book. I bought it because the cover was so recognizable. I was like, I've seen this everywhere. People seem to really like it. I think it was like October of last year when I bought it and decided that I wanted to try and get back into reading, and it worked. This book 1000% got me back into reading, and I think that the reason that I really recommend this book is because it is such a good story, and I feel like anybody could enjoy it. I don't think you have to have a certain preference to read this book. I feel like it's readable. It's very beautiful. It follows Miss Evelyn Hugo, a super famous Hollywood actress. I mean, it goes through the story of her whole life and her infamous 7 husbands. This book, like I said, it's very beautiful. It discusses love, fame, family. Like, if you like emotional things, this book is really good. I thought it was just beautifully written, and I thought the way that it was written was very, very cool, and the whole story of it was just beautiful and wonderful and amazing and perfect. I definitely enjoyed it. You know, sometimes it's sad, sometimes it's very real, it's very creative, and I think I definitely want to read more Taylor Jenkins Reid. Her ability to capture like time periods and like energy is clearly very good. Highly recommending this book, especially if you know you want to get back into reading, or you want something that's enjoyable and something that's beautiful. Yeah, I think this book is really great. These next two I'm going to kind of clump together because it is The Lord of the Flies and Of Mice and Men. Now, I actually was assigned both of these my sophomore year of high school in my English class, and they ended up being 2 of my favorite books. I still have like a weird little activity thing that we did. Yeah, these books are classics and they're wonderful. Don't shy away from them just because they're like old, classic, famous books that are likely to be, you know, assigned in school, because they really are so good and they're so thought-provoking, and I really, really like that about them. Lord of the Flies is about a group of boys on an airplane that crashes into an island, and they have to try and figure out how to survive together. Just kind of like find a way to compromise and communicate and get together to not die and hopefully be saved. And this one makes you think a lot about human nature and the way that human beings are. So that's always fun. Read it. Of Mice and Men is about 2 men named George and Lenny, and they're basically traveling, and they're looking for a home, they're looking for a place to settle down, they're looking for a place to flourish. It's kind of emotional, it's very sad, the ending is sad. I feel like you just kind of have to read it to understand it, but it's a really, really interesting book. It's really beautiful. There's a lot of great characters, there's a lot of great relationships, there's a lot of great storytelling, and I loved reading it so much. There's so much annotation in this book. Like, for some reason I was like, yeah, I'll just write in pencil on this book. But yeah, it's kind of about these guys and where they're staying and what trying to get to, you know, wherever they want to get to go. So this next book I was also assigned in school by the same teacher. I guess she just had really good taste in books. Also, she's the one who wrote my letter of recommendation for the college that I go to, so like I have a lot to thank her for. It's Kindred by Octavia Butler, and this book is so interesting. It follows the story of a modern Black woman who is basically brought back in time to the antebellum South and is on a plantation, and so she's enslaved, and it is so terrifying. It makes you think so much about slavery and racism, and I think this is a really important book for people to read. It's really, really gut-wrenching. I think it's hard, but it's supposed to be hard, you know? It is talking about something that's really, really important for people to truly understand, and it really brings you into that world and what things were like and how people were treated. I think that that's a good thing to have. I think that's a good thing for a person, somebody like me, to experience, because it can be hard to comprehend. It can be easy to just think of it as this part of history and put it aside in your mind, but I mean, this makes it so real and makes you understand like the importance of knowing it and the importance of growing as a community and as like a society. I need to read this again. It changes you, I think. So this and Out of My Mind are like things that I think you should read. Like, to be a good, well-rounded person, I think these are books that you should absolutely read. This next book I have not read in a very long time, so I can't really quite remember how good it is, but it is Stolen by Lucy Christopher. Basically, it's about this girl named Gemma who gets kidnapped, and it's written as a letter to her captor. I just remember, like, the feeling that I had reading this book, and it was gross. Like, this book is weird and unsettling, because this guy has stolen this girl, and against every instinct screaming inside her, will he also steal Gemma's heart? So he is trying to get her to fall in love with him, and it's giving Stockholm Syndrome. Felt like it was really well written. I felt like the setting, the story, all of it was really, I mean, from what I remember, I felt like it was all really well done. And I mean, I can remember little details about this book, but I haven't read it since I was like 13. So I feel like that maybe that's a sign that it's pretty good, because I can remember a lot of things about this book. I just remember feeling like really disturbed by the whole thing, because she was kidnapped and he was trying to get her to fall in love with him, and it was kind of creepy and it was kind of weird, and it starts to work and it's like, not good, but super interesting and hard to put down, that's for sure. So I would recommend giving this book a try. I had a friend read it and she said she liked it too. So this next book is Emma by Jane Austen. This is the only Jane Austen book I've ever read. It's actually very interesting. I was reading this book and I was like, you know what this reminds me of? The same sort of plot as Clueless. And then I looked it up, and Clueless was partially inspired by this book. There's a very, very similar kind of plot flowing through. If you want Clueless in the 1800s, this book is kind of that. It basically just follows this main character named Emma. She's this very confident, rich, little, cool girl, and then she meets this new girl, what was her name? Harriet. She meets this girl named Harriet, and they become friends, and she basically devotes herself to making this girl cool and, getting this girl a man, and, like, she's kind of like a little matchmaker in a way. She likes to, like, get people together, and so she's determined to, like, glow up this Harriet girl. It kind of just flows into this story of, love triangles, misunderstandings, romance, it's kind of like drama, it's kind of fun, and I thought this book was cute to read. Fun, cute little Jane Austen book. It's a little goofy, but it's enjoyable. Any music fans? George Harrison has a book called I Me Mine that I really love, and it's got, like, pictures of his, like, original writings of songs, and it's got a bunch of pictures in it, but before all that, there is, like, actual reading about his life, and there's a really nice little introduction by his wife Olivia, and it goes through, like, kind of who he was and how he grew up and how he felt and his experience in the Beatles, and it's not a very long written part, but I still thought it was really, really interesting. And I didn't even know it existed. I don't even remember how I found it, but yeah. So yeah, that's all the books I'm going to recommend. I have more because I really like reading, but this is all I'm going to recommend for now. That is all, and I guess I will be here again at the end of March / beginning of April to talk about the books that I have read. Okay, goodbye.